Hello everyone and welcome to yet another video. Today I'm here taking a closer look at the game Behold, which came out on Steam just today, actually on the 26th of October 2016. It was the studio's or the developer's first game released on Steam as far as I can tell. It's mainly developed by one guy, but it does have a few different people listed in the credits, specifically for the music and for some of the coding. In the next few minutes I'll be critiquing the game based on my own personal experiences with it. I'll point out pros and cons, talk a bit about my feelings about the full product, and in the end, hopefully you'll have figured out if the game is worth your hard-earned cash. But without further ado, let's hop straight into it. Behold is basically a twin-stick shooter with heavy focus on elemental-based attacks. You're playing as a monster summoned by a random wizard in the middle of a fight between two armies. You're now tasked to just basically kill everything. And you'll spend the rest of your character's life doing exactly that. The game features a campaign mode and an arcade mode. In both modes, if you die, you're sent back to the start. All the way to the start. As I mentioned before, there's a heavy focus on elemental-based abilities. In Behold, you'll play around with 5 different types of elements. Doom, which kills your enemies with poison. Frost, which freezes your enemies solid. Kinetic Energy, which throws your enemies up into the air and smashes their face into the ground. Fear, which scares your enemies away. Also sometimes makes them fall off cliffs, which incidentally never fails to be hilarious, and Fire, which burns your enemies. The game features 2 attacks, one on each mouse button. Each attack changes to a different element every time you use it. In the campaign mode, every time you pass a wave of enemies, you'll be given an ability. This is a passive ability which affects your skills or your character as it is in the first place. There's no active abilities to be gained from this system, and some of the buffs you get are pretty useless, but it does add a degree of interactivity to a game, which is something that's pretty important in an inactive medium. You do get to fight many different enemies throughout the game, not only different kinds, but also the original enemies which have buffs on them, which can be dodging your attacks or something in that vein. The game basically ramps up the difficulty the longer you're playing, and you will eventually get killed. This makes it more and more stressful to play the game throughout it, and it makes it more and more intense. The fear of dying gets more and more real the further you get in the game, because you know you're going to be sent back to the very beginning if you die. There's not really much story to be told except for the intro of the 2 armies fighting and the mage summoning you. You basically just fight different enemies and the game continues basically forever. Now that I've covered all the basics, let's move on to the more subjective part of the video, the pros and cons of this game. Alright, so let's start out with positive and start with the pros of this game. Now we have to start with the basic gameplay. It's fun, it's fast, it's chaotic, it's interesting, it's good to look at, it's very enjoyable, it's everything you would want from a small little cheap indie game on Steam and more. Furthermore, the game's art is actually really good. You can always tell what you're supposed to be fighting, and the main character specifically looks incredible, but despite him being pixel art. It's one of those games that really earns its pixel art stamp. I also have to mention the music. Oh my god, the music. As a person who likes metal music in the first place, I find it so enjoyable to just slaughter waves of enemies while listening to something that's just metal. Just take a quick listen and see if you don't agree with me. It just really fits the overall theme of the game, and even if you don't like metal, I have a feeling you might enjoy the soundtrack anyway. Now let's move on to the more negative part of the video. Let's look at the cons of this game. Bear in mind, there will be more items on this list than on the positive one, only because I think nitpicking sometimes can be useful. Let's start out with the combo system. The combo system in the game actually works, and it does add a more chaotic feel to when you just kill a bunch of enemies, but I have the feeling that it was designed in a way where you would actually be able to do it intentionally. And with the fast-paced combat and the fast-paced action in the game, it's not ever possible to take a second out of your time, look down, see what element you have, and combo it with another element. You just don't have the time. Unless you have StarCraft levels of reaction time, you can't do it. The easy way to fix this would be to add the ability to change elements manually, instead of your basic attack just using a random element every time it's fired. This would give the player more control and add a bit more strategy into the game, because at the moment you kind of have to ignore the combo system to be able to focus on the actual gameplay, which is really sad because it had potential. The next one here is kind of a nitpick, but it also does lead to a lot of frustration. The power-ups in the game don't seem to have a hitbox that is big enough, because I lost count of the times I died on top of a power-up that could have saved my life. This is, as you can imagine, really annoying, and it should just be fixed, to be honest. Next one here is a big annoyance of mine. One of the only ways you can get health back in the game is by eating your enemies. Sadly, the eating system is unreliable and hard to utilize. You eat enemies by running into them. Sadly, I think my monster might be going vegetarian because half the time he wouldn't eat the guy and I would get hit in the face, lose some health, and thereby doing the exact opposite of what I started out wanting to do. It seems that some enemies you can't even eat, but it's not clear which ones. This is not explained, it's not tutorialized, and it's just run poorly. The easiest way to fix this would be, firstly, explaining which enemies you can and cannot eat, if that's even a thing, and also by making the eating system more active, basically adding a button to the attack of eating someone. This would make it so you have more control over your character, instead of just having to run into an enemy who's about to hit you, by the way, and hoping for the best. Another minor problem that the game has is the clunky implementation of the controller support. When I finally did get my control to work, it was twitchy and unreliable to use. The last two ones I have are minor nitpicks, so I won't go into much detail. The sound of the dying enemies can get really annoying after a while, which wouldn't be that big of a problem if you could turn it off, but you can't. Also, the option menu is lackluster at best, even lacking a basic resolution option. Alright, fair enough. Now that all the negative stuff is out of my head and on the table, let's move on to my final thoughts. Behold is a fun little indie game with enjoyable fast-paced gameplay. It also has an amazing soundtrack and art style. Despite a few minor gripes with the game design and some annoyances with the lack of an option menu, I still found the game to be enjoyable and addictive. The game is only about $2 on Steam, and it's honestly worth every cent. If you would like to check out the game, it will be a link to the Steam page below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and if you really loved it, I also have a subscribe button. All that being said, I really hope to see you all in the next video. Bye!